the American African situation is so ridiculously peculiar because we want the oppressor to help us get freedom.
So what is the promise of Kamala, and what can she truly bring to the table? Is she a Biden, Obama, Clinton clone? Or is she the leader who can carve a new path for Africa?
Do you support reparations for Black people?
So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit Black people. No, because whatever benefits that Black family will benefit that community and society as a whole and the country. Kamala Harris. Let's have a good debate.
Have fun.
Thank you.
Unfortunately for Kamala, society has often pigeonholed her into racial and gender tropes. However, she skillfully plays into her strengths, and naturally, she embodies a leadership style that mirrors the most respected position most people reserve to anyone, the role of a mother. It is no wonder that in the debate, all 5 feet 4 inches of Kamala not only dominated Trump, who should have loomed over her like a skyscraper, but instead, she made the whole Trump Tower tumble down.
I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was investigated because he refused to rent property to Black families.
Commanding the entire room, she confidently expanded into his space, making eye contact with him at every opportunity. Trump, on the other hand, seemed to shrink, refusing to meet her gaze like a scared little boy being scolded by his mother. His posture and inability to confront her directly revealed his discomfort, a stark contrast to Kamala's poised and authoritative presence.
Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country. One who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always disparaging the American people.
It's unfortunate the Olympics of expectations placed on women, especially Black women. But Kamala cuts through the nonsense like butter. She has an ability to control the room with care and concern for the American people. Yet a calm yet lethal demeanor is something Hillary Clinton's colder approach lacked. Kamala, on the other hand, tapped into the maternal archetype, and that had a profound effect on audiences. Her concerned but firm authority, as if she were reprimanding a child, disarmed Trump in a way that men, especially those socialized to respect maternal figures, couldn't ignore. Trump's shrinking posture under her gaze harkens back to the maternal dominance Black nannies held over white boys. There's a unique intersection of power that these women occupied, and Kamala tactfully seized that dynamic to overpower Trump, feeding the nation with hope while scolding Trump for bad behavior, showing her political acumen and readiness for leadership on the world stage. Her background as former federal prosecutor, district attorney, and attorney general only bolsters her ability to stand up to the likes of world leaders like Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping. In many ways, her presence demands respect because even among the most powerful men, few would dare to publicly disrespect a maternal figure. Kamala's dominance wasn't just political. It was psychological, rooted in her ability to project warmth, strength, and authority simultaneously. I voted for Kamala Harris as California senator back in 2016 when I lived there. I also voted for Hillary Clinton. This was, of course, before I understood the gravity of the Clinton family's deep imperialist nature. In fact, one could argue that as Secretary of State in Obama's administration, with her former experience as First Lady and 2008 presidential candidate, Obama leaned on her expertise in the geopolitical landscape. The Clintons can be seen as pioneers of modern democratic imperialism. But of course, I didn't understand this back then, and so I voted for her. And as we observe the interplay of democratic leadership, the passing of the torch, so to speak, almost like a pledge of allegiance, who's to say that Kamala won't divert from their mission of global economic warfare on Africa?
Democrats do have a program for Black America. Their program for Black America is white supremacy. Their program for Black America is oppression. It is police violence. It is the carceral state. It is gaslighting. It is performative cosplay Blackness. It is cultivating long-term structures of dependency and incarceration. Their plan for Black America is having Black men pre-make biscuits for 15 cents an hour, on production lines in state and federal prisons, so that corporations that they work for can make a little money. There is a very, very clear program for Black America that is coming out of the Democrat Party, but it is not a program of liberation. It is a program of white supremacist oppression. And it's made all the more obscene by the fact that it is often accompanied by a cosplay Blackness, an appropriation of liberatory and emancipatory symbols from the Black radical tradition, and then the weaponization of those against our communities as tools, not just of justifying and enabling ongoing genocides in our own communities.
But if Black women think Kamala Harris is going to get in office and take care of them, if Black women think Kamala Harris is going to get in office and take care of them, or they got something else coming. You know what she's going to take care of? Her East Indian immigrants.
The platitudes that these politicians give to Black communities, or when they go into a community that's predominantly Black, it's laughable, it's ridiculous. And they feel like, oh, if I say these things, I don't actually have to do anything for them. Never forget what we found out about Nancy Pelosi's emails, the email that was sent to her during the BLM protest. Never forget that. What was leaked never promised them anything. And that's what the Democratic Party's been doing. They're not doing anything for Black people. Now, a number of people, they'll come over here and say, oh, you're just helping the Republicans. No, I'm not trying to help them either. We know the Republican Party isn't trying to do those things. I'm not trying to help them either. I'm trying to tell you, stop being a slave to the system. I'm trying to tell you, stop voting for this party that is doing nothing for you. Now, people will fall for this. People fell for it during Obama too, but at least Obama did have like a policy platform. But Kamala is literally just running on vibes and the fact that she's not Donald Trump. And the pandering that is done to the Black community, you go to Atlanta, so you bring in Meg Thee Stallion. You're in Detroit, so you feel like you better thank a union member.
Well, look, you may not be a union member. You better thank a union member.
Since when does the vice president have what sounds like a Southern accent?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well,
I mean, this is...
She was talking about unions in Detroit using one tone of voice.
Is this something that
same
you think...
line.
Okay, Peter.
That she used the same line in Pittsburgh, and it sounded like she at least had some kind of a Southern drawl.
I mean, do you hear the question that you're... I mean, do you think Americans seriously think that this is an important question?
They don't do this to other communities. You know? I mean, I don't see these kind of things. When Kamala Harris, they're going to go sit down and have conversations with the Latino community. Do they bring in Enrique Iglesias? Do they bring him in? Do they call Ricky Martin? Ricky still sing? Ricky, do you? I don't know. They do this with us because they feel like All Black people are going to care about is entertainment. So as long as we just entertain them, they'll come out and support us. Now, for some of those things, I think we do have to sit back and ask ourselves, why do we allow that to happen? Why do people fall for it? Not everybody, but some people do. Why do they fall for it? Because as long as they are entertaining you, then they don't really have to do anything for you. As long as they're entertaining you, people won't ask them or demand that they do anything.
Under the Biden administration, coming out of the incredible popular mandate for fundamental police reform, defunding, and abolition that came after the Floyd uprisings, what you have gotten instead from the Democrats is increased police murders in every single year since George Floyd. What you've gotten instead of reduction of violent militarized police presence, you have the extension of the repressive techniques that have been used against Black communities now being extended to middle class kids on college campuses through cop cities. You have a dramatic extension of the carceral state.
If she can get 8 years, by the time Kamala Harris is done being president of the United States of America, the East Indian people will be the priority minority in this country. Not the homosexuals, not Black people, not Latinos. Let Kamala Harris get that White House. The East Indian American will be the priority minority by the time she leaves the Oval Office. And America cannot afford for Russia and China to draft India, and now America has to deal with a three-headed monster. China is already one of the most populated nations in the world and is also one of the most economically powerful countries in the world. India is economically powerful. India has one of the large world populations, and just like China is the Walmart of the world, India is the tech giant of the world. So this could possibly be a play by the power structure to use Kamala Harris to go into India and try to use her diplomatic power to bring India back to America. Because remember, India is a BRICS country. India is in with Brazil, Russia, India, China, South America. She already in BRICS, but she hasn't formally said, I'm riding with China against America. India hasn't formally said, I'm riding with Russia against America. If India decides to ride with Russia and China, America over, we might as well all move out. And that's why I can see this as a diplomatic move. Giving the East Indians an American president, that's a hell of a consolation prize. Think about that now. I made one of you the president of our country to stop you from riding with Russia and China. It's a hell of a consolation prize.
Do you believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is only on the ticket because she is a Black woman?
She was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was Black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn Black, and now she wants to be known as Black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she Black?
She has always identified as a Black woman. She went to a historically Black college.
I respect either one, but she obviously doesn't, because she was Indian all the way, and then all of a sudden she made a turn and she became a Black person.
Just to be clear,
many Africans may not see her as Black because mixed race identity isn't recognized as Black in Africa, making it easy for Africans to distance themselves from her. However, it's crucial to understand the complexities of her identity in America. Historically, white Americans have meddled in Black identity politics, weaponizing Blackness to exclude mixed-race individuals from progress. The one-drop rule asserts that anyone with even a single drop of Black ancestry is considered Black, regardless of any other racial heritage. This construct was designed to ensure that Blackness remained at the very bottom of every racial hierarchy. It allowed other non-white races to position themselves somewhere in the middle, often at the expense of Black people, stepping on their necks to climb higher in the social order. During the Jim Crow era, in some towns, mixed-race people, often the offspring and then descendants of enslavers, began to ascend in society, receiving better housing, education, and opportunities. not equal to their white counterparts, but above dark-skinned blacks. But as they progressed, the whites took notice and did what they did best. They swiftly designed systems to dismantle that progress, ensuring that mixed-race people were denied access to whiteness and were deemed nothing other than black, 3/5 of a white person. While we cannot ignore the privileges that come with colorism and proximity to whiteness, systematically mixed-race individuals have faced nearly the same levels of oppression as dark-skinned black people.
Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something, I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words, so I'm
I
asking...
don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her.
Today, some whites want to deny her blackness because it challenges their own interests. They want to prevent her from accessing black votes. But they can't pick and choose when it suits them. They created the one-drop rule, officially codified in the 20th century, but it can be traced back to earlier laws and practices from hundreds of years ago, designed to enforce white supremacist eugenics. If she was considered black when it benefited white people, she's certainly black when it doesn't. They only instigate these actions to stoke division, confusion, and chaos, allowing them to continue their ascent in white supremacy.
Honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other.
In a world where Trump peddles doom and gloom, Kamala's strategy embodies empowerment and joy. As the late Maya Angelou once put it, people remember how you made them feel. And boy, does Kamala's marketing make you feel good. Make you feel hope, make you feel possibility, disingenuous or not. Does Kamala truly stand a chance against Trump? And if she does win, will he concede gracefully?
In 2022, there were 10 million more women registered to vote than men in America. Now I'm talking everybody, Art, black, white, red, yellow, brown, gay, straight, everybody. There's 10 million more women registered to vote than men, Art. Elections have been decided by votes less than 10 million. You've had elections decided by 1 million. And if poor white America thinks they were robbed of this election, that January 6th takeover, that was nothing but a pool party for what you're about to see in this country if Donald Trump loses this election. I would not want to be a black person in a white neighborhood on November the 5th, 2024, when those presidential election results are read and Donald Trump is not the winner. I believe white folks are going to show up and show out, Art. You better have a gun, a knife. Black people better exercise, our Second Amendment rights? Right to carry, is that the Second Amendment or the Fourth?
I want to say the second.
I think it's the second. Black folks better exercise their right to carry. You better buy every gun, every bullet you got, because if Donald J. Trump loses this election, going against a Democrat who had 3 months to run, you had 3 months to run and you beat Donald Trump, white America gonna flip off, Art.
Trump is a product of white male entitlement. But in a world where a majority of white men oppose him, 91% of the US population resides on the East and West Coasts, which are Democratic strongholds, and when you include NATO nations, the white world stands against him. Does he have a chance to win the popular vote? And even if he does, will the Electoral College cast its votes for him, especially as a convicted felon and sexual abuser? Then there's the analysis of African liberation. In reality, 4 years isn't enough to dismantle this 600-year-old system of white supremacy, especially when most African leaders aren't prepared to hit the ground running. They effectively would become headless chickens, waiting for directives from their white masters. The most crucial questions Africans supporting Trump's chaos should ask are, who comes after Trump's 4 years? Is it Ron DeSantis, who halted the teaching of Black history in Florida schools through the anti-critical race theory bill, and all the racist anti-Black laws he's passed?
Well, a student at New College of Florida says that she discovered books in a dumpster behind the library at that school yesterday. Well, tonight the college admits that some of those books came from the school's Gender and Diversity Center, which has been shut down.
This is video the Sea Alliance recorded, showing the books being transported to a waste disposal site.
To see something like this is disgusting and disheartening because there was no communication between administration and students. There was no community. There was no attempt to do anything good with this. This could have been a win for the community. This could have been thousands of free books to people who need them, and instead, it is in a dump. It is in a dump. It is next to trash.
In any academic institution, any school, any place of higher education, it's wrong to throw away books, I think, in any capacity when, of course, there's someone who would want these books. They don't need to end up in a landfill.
Even if Trump succeeds in dismantling the white power structure in 4 years, which is highly unlikely, who's to say the next conservative administration won't destroy every economic progress Africa makes? Just look at the history of dismantling Black economic infrastructure. Black Wall Street, Black banks, Lake Lanier, and so on.
Black Wall Street was Tulsa, Oklahoma, the Greenwood District, where Black people built their own community, had their own self-sustained community, beautiful economy, making it for themselves, and white people destroyed it.
Yeah.
It wasn't policy. It was white people.
Well, it wasn't white people. It was
no. Let's be very clear. It was white people.
No.
It
was those white people.
It was white people in that community. Absolutely.
Exactly.
And and let me just say this: Elaine, Arkansas. Rosewood in Florida, Atlanta, Georgia, the Sweet Auburn District, North Nashville, and Nashville in Nashville, Tennessee. Each one of these communities were booming Black economies where white people, not in the same place, but it was the same group of people every time, destroyed those communities. So you can't say it's policy when when Black people do what they need to do and build for themselves, and white people destroy it.
It's somewhat presumptuous to assume that Trump will lift the brakes off the West's economic warfare on Africa when it benefits America directly. If anything, he is expanding the economic infrastructure to now extract from Europe, especially since he's made it clear that money is his top priority. And he has advisors like Eric Prince advocating for Africa to be recolonized.
People on the left are going to watch this, they're going to say, wait a minute, Eric Prince is talking about being a colonialist again.
Absolutely. Yes.
So perhaps it's safer to play the long game with Kamala Harris. Sure, her Democratic predecessors are neocolonialists, but we don't yet know if she will follow their lead or carve her own path. Even if she doesn't, research shows that blackwashing often opens more doors for Black people in the long run. She may not be the one to halt American imperialism, but she will certainly pave the way for the next generation, people who are more likely to make meaningful changes for the world.
I said, what's your overall vision of foreign policy? And she said, to dismantle the American empire. And I said, yeah, and you better hurry up quick and do it before somebody do it for you, right? That those two processes look very different. If you take the $1 trillion a year that are being thrown away, murdering other people's children in foreign countries, and instead put that into investments in infrastructure, into social housing, into healthcare in this country, then that looks like a flourishing, prosperous future, not just for Black America, but for all of America.
It's not just that we're making a mess out of the world. You know, we've committed some like 80 regime change operations since the Second World War. What's going on in Gaza is it's like a microcosm. It's like a symbol of empire and colonialism kind of run amok. But it's not the only place. You know, I mean, we've been rolling out slow motion genocides all over the world for quite some time. And, you know, this is catching up to us. We are no longer the dominant power around the world. power is shifting. We need to shift with it. We can no longer be giving marching orders to the rest of the world. We need to stand up like an adult and be part of a global community and a shared power structure.
Jill Stein is probably the best candidate for Africa. A vote for her may not be a waste, but a building block for the future.
Dr. Stein, in 2002, you ran for governor of Massachusetts and you lost. In 2004, you ran for state representative in Massachusetts and you lost. In 2006, you ran for Secretary of the Commonwealth. You also lost. In 2010, you ran for governor again, this time against the first Black governor in Massachusetts, Deval Patrick. You lost. This is not DNC talking points. This is my research. And sadly for you, the research says you have never won an election. One thing that AOC has done that you haven't is win some elections.
What I have a problem with is the fact that if you are running for president, you are the de facto leader of your party. I've been on record that about my criticisms of a two-party system, so this is not about that. But you are the leader of your party. And if you run for years and years and years and years and years in a row, and your party has not grown, and you don't add city council seats, and you don't add down ballot candidates, and you don't add state electeds, that's bad leadership. To me, it does not read as authentic. It reads as predatory. What does this person do to grow power?
In this electoral college system, all y'all throwing your votes away. Because unless you live in one of them 4 or 5 swing states, it is already decided that your state is gonna go either blue or red before you ever get into the booth. So instead of throwing your vote away on team red or team blue when it don't make no difference in the state that you in, why not vote for reparations now? Why not vote for a ceasefire now? Why not build power in a Green Party that is going to give people an actual viable third-party alternative so that we can get these thugs on either side of the aisle to behave like grown folk?
That is a way for you to use your vote as some sort of leverage. And number 3, this is not just about this election. This is about building a third-party movement. Jill Stein and Kshama Sawant have gotten together for a collaboration. This is why they're traveling across the country. They've been having these talks or whatever. They were out to the DNC convention, protesting there, giving several speeches. Jill Stein and Kshama Sawant are building something bigger. So after November, this doesn't stop just as like, okay, well, the presidential election's done, so whatever. That's not the end of it. So if you're just looking at this as what is going to happen in November, then you don't understand the strategy. As I've said multiple times before in the show, you have to build a third party movement. The Democratic Party wasn't always this powerful party. It was something that they built. So if you want to have consistency and longevity with third parties and you want them to grow and get bigger, you have to build it.
If we move from that 5%, that we feel is basically assured at this point in time, that will lead to $10 million in federal funding to run the next election so that we're not chasing, behind. If we have moved to the point where Jill is able to make that phone call, that we've moved from that 5% to that 34%, that will have mean that there is a profound mandate that comes from the American people with that office. That means that, yes, you might have these, intransigent, entrenched positions on both teams blue and team red, but what it will mean is that they will have to respond in a different way to Team Green if we have that kind of popular mandate. And that's why we're trying to take the case to the American people. We might fall short in making that case. They may never show us their chin to where we get to throw that knockout punch. But in the meantime, we are able to consolidate power that can be utilized in the next electoral cycle and in subsequent electoral cycles to give the American people a genuine choice rather than just the 2 gangbangers.
The problem is Trump offers chaos, which seems enticing to some Africans seeking karma. But to others, chaos is a ladder that only empowers the prepared Heritage Foundation, the architects of Project 2025, who have made their mission synonymous with white supremacy. While Trump stagnates NATO by billing them for America's military, he won't dismantle it, and whoever succeeds him can easily reorganize. The issue is, the successor might be even more of a white nationalist and anti-black than Trump himself. Truth be told, Trump's isolationalist approach might be precisely what Pan-Africanism needs. The BLM protests in 2020 opened up a global consciousness about Black history and the ongoing proliferation of white supremacy. It awakened many Black people to the architecture of their situation. It takes discomfort to bring about real progress, but that progress can only materialize when Africa achieves economic independence, enabling Pan-African benefits through genuine Black value chain ownership, education, and good governance. Meanwhile, the Democrats keep Black America placated, but never truly advancing, all while exploiting Africa from behind the scenes. Trump, on the other hand, doesn't care about Africa or Black people for that matter, and will likely ignore both, which could be just what we need to understand we are on our own, and we must liberate ourselves. If Trump dismantles the deep state, including the CIA and NATO's alliance, it could result in chaos and disorder. Yet in that chaos, there might be a silver lining. White America could become too preoccupied with its own reorganization to continue exploiting others. This situation could create the ideal conditions for Black America and Africa to pursue true liberation without external interference.
Why aren't we getting it right? It's going to be Africa Day this week.
Yes.
And I still don't feel like our continent is united. Why is that?
Well, number one, when you look at the end of colonization in Africa, there were 3 mistakes made. Number one, a lot of those who led the independence movements were either assassinated or incarcerated. So the deals that were made in the 11th hour of the end of colonization were not made with the revolutionaries. It was made with the hand-picked puppets who replaced those revolutionaries after assassination and incarceration. So that's number one. Number two, the other issue that we have is that Africa itself did not control the decolonization process economically and politically. The former colonizer still had a hand in the way in which the economy would function after the fall of colonization. And number three, many of your African leaders were trained by the Westerners. They were educated in the West. So they have a value system that is very much in alignment with European capitalism. We as African people have become more materialistic, almost more so than the white man. We have lost our spirituality. We have hearkened after this pursuit of material consumption, which has eroded our foundation and our culture as a people. And so I think that in order for Africa to get back on track and head in the direction that she needs to go into, we have to divorce ourselves from European capitalism, and we have to crush neocolonialism once and for all. Giving African people a flag and giving them an anthem while white people still control all the resources is nothing but hypocrisy.
But the world is changing, and much like how slavery eventually became unprofitable for the West, the exploitation of Africa is reaching its end. The truth is, you're only as strong as your weakest link. For the world to thrive economically, powering AI, and address challenges like low birth rates, it's time we allow Africa to develop independently. Empowering Africa means unlocking immense potential, creating a more balanced global economy, and ensuring sustainable progress for all.
Nobody will develop Africa but Africans.
Yes.
Okay, so no matter what, we must lead before other people are going to get convinced to join us.
Why are you going into debt by borrowing money from these European countries when Africans in America, we're a $2 trillion economy? $2 trillion. Come and borrow from us. Create a bank in your country where we can invest, and now you can take care of all the expenses of your country, and you're doing it by working with your brothers and sisters in the diaspora. Alone, we can do nothing. Together, we can do everything.
I would have decided to invest most of my money in Microsoft, Google, Tesla when stocks were very low. But I decided that no, I need to make my continent great, and that is why I pump so much money into the continent.
The challenge facing Black global societies is our lack of unity through Pan-Africanism. If Africans were more connected with Black Americans, we would gain the foresight and cross-references needed to recognize how the same strategies that have dismantled Black America are also undermining African economies. However, because we don't face white oppressors daily, it's easy for Africans to focus solely on their puppet leaders as the problem. The reality is that to truly address these issues, we must tackle them at the root. The sooner Africans start collaborating and unifying the diaspora, seizing these online diaspora wars and fostering political unity, the sooner we can shape our liberation akin to the unity seen in white Westerners. Neither Kamala nor Trump are good for Black liberation. The truth of the matter is that Pan-African liberation is in our unity and in our hands.
There are so many young people in the African continent who are just fed up. They have seen this long post-colonial history. They've seen how colonialism turned into neocolonialism. They see how the countries have been divided, how the people have been manipulated, how every charlatan of every type has come into the African continent to peddle their wares, and people want to see a change. They want to see something different because they can look around and see that there are people in other parts of the world that are not living that way.
We have to put our capital behind the young entrepreneurs of today in Africa. The future of Africa's young people is not in the United States, it's not in Europe, it's not in Latin America. It is in Africa growing well and putting its resources behind its demographic asset and turning that into a workforce of the world that can also be a big entrepreneurship zone for the world. So I think that's what we have to do. If we don't put our capital behind the ideation, the businesses and entrepreneurship in Africa, with 477 million young people, it will be the biggest risk we ever taken.
In reality, a multipolar world where power is balanced between the West, East, and South is far more advantageous for global equilibrium and peace than a uni or bipolar one dominated by the West versus the East. A more diversified distribution of power allows for greater collaboration, reducing the risk of dominance by any single bloc. As the saying goes, there's enough room at the top. If you're new here, my name is Kenem O. You're watching Business in Nigeria, a channel about Nigeria's economic liberation. If you're interested in this kind of content, please consider subscribing.